Folks, I think another lockdown is coming. Just look at Europe. I know you might not want to hear it, but we need to pay attention to Europe because I know sometimes, as Americans, we're like, the only thing that affects us is here in the United States. Nothing else matters, right? We tend to have this American like ethnocentrism about ourselves. But if you're not paying attention to what's happening in Europe right now and what's happening across the United States, you are in for a rude awakening, and we are going to enter a catastrophe. We thought the spring was bad. It's only going to get worse unless we heed these warnings. So what's happening in Europe right now? Well, we're seeing a resurgence in COVID-19 cases. But what's amazing to me about these resurgence that we're seeing across Europe is that they pale in comparison to the numbers we are still seeing in the United States. Did you hear me? Like, they're not even getting close to what's happening in the United States, and yet it's causing a ripple effect across Europe. And it's causing a ripple effect across the financial markets. And what happens in European financial markets matters to the United States. It matters to your 401k. It matters to your ability to put food on the table. It matters in the US value of the US dollar, which has saw a slight comeback and could plummet once again. These markets move currency, and they move government currency. This is why I'm a fan of not investing in government currency and not having your money tied up in a US dollar. So what's happening across Europe? Well, let's tell you. This week, Europe experienced a record number of new coronavirus cases. Up 71,000 new cases on September 21st, just a few days ago. This is according to the European Center for Disease Control and Prevention, quoting more than half of European countries have reported a greater than 10% increase in the past 2 weeks. 10%. Even countries that had largely avoided problems the first time around are now seeing problems, like in the Czech Republic. They pretty much avoided it. Not anymore. Stricter regulations trying to curb the spread of virus could remain in place for the entire winter. In the United Kingdom, for example, big trouble on that little island, where case rates are doubling by the week. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, crazy hair Boris Johnson, Donald Trump's little brother, announced new restrictions yesterday that could last 6 months. 6 months. Warning the country is at a perilous turning point. Now, this is a big thing for Boris Johnson to say because he was like in the Trump denier of coronavirus camp. Until he got coronavirus and had to be quarantined. But he was right there with Trump. This thing will get better when it gets warmer. It's a hoax. It's not real. Until he got it. And now he's a believer. Isn't it amazing how that happens? Anyway, he says they are at a perilous turning point. Take a look at Spain. Look at these people in Spain. The news out of Spain overnight, they've been these old guys in Spain that kind of sit out. That's what I love about Europe. Kind of sit out, have a coffee, and talk in the afternoon. We don't do that in the United States. Spain has been facing a resurgence of COVID-19 since July, had the highest infection rate in Europe, and over the past 2 weeks, they had 122,000 new cases. With a third of those cases occurring in Madrid, the number of confirmed cases now stands at more than 640,000, and hospitals are reaching their maximum capacity again. Madrid, Spain, of course, Milan, and all of the issues. I mean, they had converted hockey rinks and to turn them into morgues because the bodies were piling up so high in Spain. I'm sorry, in Italy and Spain. Italy, again, issues increasing cases there. Not as bad as some other spots like France. Here's some photos out of France. These are clinics set up to do these testing right now. France, in Paris, Marseille, and Bordeaux, all major hotspots right now for the virus. They've seen now 450,000 cases, and it's continuing to rise. Daily cases are now to 13,000. Again, folks, I just want to put this in perspective. We have about 40 to 50,000 new cases per day in the United States. They're worried about 13,000 in France per day. 40,000 in the United States. We just passed 200,000 deaths in the United States. what this could do more broadly to our economy is devastating unless we get a handle on it. Let's go to Ireland. Then I want to talk about where the United States sits on all of this. So here's a look at Ireland. This is a hearse in Ireland. They've had huge rise in cases there. 33,000 cases in a country of only 4.6 million people. Here's a hearse carrying bodies. Government introduced a new plan for living with COVID with 5 different levels there. Dublin has been placed under a level 3 restriction. The rest of the other countries at a level 2, which means under level 2, schools, restaurants, and pubs remain open, but there are limitations on the number of people that can gather in those spaces. Restaurants, cafes, and pubs can only stay open for takeaway services or outdoor dining, again, in Ireland. And then in Germany, let's take a look at Germany now. Here's Germany. People lined up at clinics there. They're having an equal amount of pain. Germany has one of the most effective test, tracking, and tracing systems in the world for COVID-19. And somehow that country is faring better than others in Europe, of course, because they did all that. Germany, though, is also seeing a big rise in cases. Think about that. They were like the beacon, okay? Germany was like the beacon of hope in the world because of how effectively they had treated this with science, testing and tracing and tracking. But there are people who had cases at a meatpacking area, and because they got together, and there's a lot of criticism that the government knew about it or didn't move quickly enough because there were cases unfolding at this factory, and then it spread. Now, it's not as bad as other parts, but even Germany having issues. So all of these countries across Europe experiencing lockdowns. People who were hoping to travel to Europe and travel to different parts. I mean, I was hoping to travel to Norway at some point. I was hoping to go to Bordeaux at some point. My wife and I years ago, 10 years ago, for our honeymoon, went to Bordeaux, France, and we had hoped to go back this year. It's not going to happen because that's a hot spot. So is Paris. So is Marseille. We thought we would go for our anniversary. Not going to happen. All these flights being canceled. People saying they want to go to Dominican Republic. Not going to happen. Go to Norway. If you do, you got to quarantine for 2 weeks. So that's what's happening in Europe, and we better be paying attention to it. We covered this again in our newsletter today. You can subscribe to our newsletter totally for free just by going to morninginvest.com. But I do want to talk about what's going on in the United States. Now, Neel Kashkari, who's the Fed chief in Minnesota, he is calling for a proper lockdown in the United States, and he reiterated what he said just a short time ago. We need to do it right this time. We need to pay attention to what Europe is doing. So should we be entering another lockdown? Because if we don't, the bottom line is the only way to stop this is to stop the virus or get a vaccine, right? That's it. Otherwise, this is going to continue to happen. People are going to continue to die. Businesses are going to continue to close because we're not doing it properly in the United States. We don't have a national strategy. Here's Neel Kashkari talking about this. Let's do it right this time.
So my biggest question around your plan is, haven't we already tried that? I mean, we did that a few months ago. It devastated the economy, worked a little bit for the virus, but then didn't crush it and numbers kept rising again. Why would we want to do that again?
Well, you're right. We did a partial approach of this in the spring, but we gave up far too soon, and it was not nearly strict enough. We've looked at research that says around 38 or 39% of workers in America are in essential industries, but the shutdowns were very varied. Here in Minnesota, 78% of workers were deemed essential. So it was a very partial shutdown, and then we gave up far too soon. And as a result of it, the virus is now raging almost out of control across the country with 50,000 cases a day. We have this very muted, uneven economic recovery. As you know, college football is being deferred. What kind of recovery is that? When we look at other countries who had much more aggressive shutdowns and then more gradually reopening with the health professionals in the lead, their economies are recovering much more quickly now. So we blew it the first time, and Dr. Osterholm and I are arguing we should do it right this time.
So Jeff Hart, I saw in the chat, says, Clayton, you fool, there's a 99.6% survival rate. Okay. Go ahead and take your chances, Jeff. Tell that to my 86-year-old father who just had heart surgery. Tell that to, Look, the United States is the fattest country in the world, okay? Next to Mexico. We go back and forth. The amount of diabetes that we have in the United States, the amount of people with pre-existing conditions, the reason we've had so many deaths, over 200,000, and you compare that, just think about 9/11 for a second, and 3,000 people losing their lives on 9/11, and a country that was mobilized into action, flags hanging on every door, President George W. Bush with an approval rating of 96%, or was it 92%? I forget. Goes out to a Yankees game and throws a perfect pitch, and everyone goes wild. We were mobilized into action, over 3,000 deaths. And yet 205,000 deaths. We get you in the chat saying, Clayton, you fool, it's a 99% survival rate. Okay. What do you think about that, Joe?
Come on, man.
Exactly. Come on, Jeff. Really? Even President Trump himself recognized but lied to the American people about how vicious this thing is. It's way worse than the flu, and we know it is. So don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by those talking points. So what do? Do we enter another lockdown? Do we just let everything open and just let herd immunity take over, and millions of people will have to die for us to reach that point? Because you know there are crazy people that want us to just go to herd immunity levels. But I think it comes down to having no national mandate for masks. You know, if you go to Spain, by the way, if you're outside on the streets, you will be fine. You will be locked up, basically, unless you have a mask on. You've got to wear a mask outside in Spain. Not in the United States. Just look at a Trump rally, for crying out loud. Did you see that huge Trump rally with thousands of people with no masks on? We're not going to stop this, and we're going to continue to be hammered as a result of it. You know, the airline industry is about to collapse. If they don't get a stimulus in the next few days, by October 1st, they've warned that they're going to furlough tens of thousands of workers. United, American, tens of thousands of workers gone, and perhaps permanently, because we can't fly anywhere because we didn't do this properly. Let me know. Let me know in the chat what you think, but we better be paying attention to what Europe's doing right now. You better be paying attention. If you've got money, okay, if you've got money in a savings account, I would seriously be moving that money out of there, putting it into gold, silver, real estate, or like a savings account alternative, like Outlet. If you go to morninginvest.com/outlet, at least your money is not in this corrupt banking system. Because what happens in Europe, what happens in the stock market, has a direct effect on your personal savings. And if the inflation rate continues to go up, which it will, and is going up in the next few months, the Fed has already told us it will be, that means your money in a savings account will be worth less tomorrow than it is today. So you need to pay attention to that. So please subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. If I brought you any value at all, we publish this show every day at 9 a.m. Eastern Time right here on YouTube. So just go to morninginvest.com is how you can subscribe to our daily newsletter as well.